How did one Marine almost single-handedly stop 3,000 Japanese soldiers in the dark of night? And why did he return to battle when he could have lived a life of fame at home? His name was Sergeant John Basilone, known to his fellow Marines as Manila John. On Guadalcanal in year 1942, during one of the fiercest battles of World War II, Basilone stood at the center of a storm. When enemy forces launched a massive nighttime assault to overrun Henderson Field, Basilone refused to yield. He hauled machine guns through enemy fire, repaired them under pressure, and even fought with his Colt .45 when ammunition ran low. By dawn, his courage had helped shatter a Japanese regiment. For his actions, he became the first enlisted Marine of World War II to receive the Medal of Honor. But Basilone's story didn't end there. Unlike many heroes who found safety after fame, he wasn't content with parades and speeches. He wanted to be with his men on the front lines. That choice would send him to Iwo Jima, where his final act of bravery would make him one of the most celebrated Marines in history. This is the story of John Basilone, the Marine who chose duty over life itself. John Basilone's story begins far from the Pacific battlefields. He was born on the 4th of November, year 1916, in Buffalo, New York, the 6th of 10 children in a working-class Italian-American family. His father, a tailor, had immigrated from Italy, while his mother raised the large household with quiet discipline. When John was still young, the family moved to Raritan, New Jersey, a tight-knit town that would forever claim him as its own. Basilone's schooling ended after 8th grade. Like many sons of immigrants during the Great Depression, he chose work over classrooms, determined to help support his family. But John carried a restless spirit. At 18, hungry for adventure, he enlisted in the United States Army. His first assignment carried him across the Pacific, where he served in Hawaii and the Philippines. He quickly grew to love Manila's energy, boxing and barracks competitions, exploring the islands, and earning the nickname that would follow him into legend, Manila John. After completing his 3-year enlistment, Basilone returned to the United States, taking a job as a truck driver in Maryland. But the open road soon left him unsatisfied. He missed the discipline of the military, the camaraderie of soldiers, and the sense of purpose that civilian life could not provide. In July year 1940, with war already raging in Europe, Basilone enlisted again, this time in the United States Marine Corps. His training took him to Parris Island, Quantico, and New River, where he built the toughness that would later carry him through the fiercest battles of the Pacific. Service in Cuba at Guantanamo Bay hardened him further. By year 1942, his unit was bound for the Solomon Islands. When the Marines stormed ashore at Guadalcanal in August, John Basilone was ready. He was no longer just a restless young man, he was about to become a legend. By the summer of year 1942, the Pacific War had reached a critical point. The Japanese Empire stretched across Asia and the Pacific, and its expansion threatened Australia. To halt their advance, the Allies launched their first major offensive, the invasion of Guadalcanal and the Solomon Islands. The island's prize was an unfinished Japanese airfield, soon renamed Henderson Field, whose runways gave control of the skies. Whoever held the airfield would command the region. At first, the Marines seized the strip with relative ease, but the Japanese were determined to take it back. By October, they had massed over 15,000 troops for a decisive blow. On the night of the 24th of October, in driving rain and darkness, more than 3,000 soldiers surged toward the Marine perimeter, shouting "Banzai" as they attacked. It was a scream meant to terrify, and for many defenders, it did. The jungle exploded with gunfire, machine guns rattled, mortars pounded, and bayonets flashed in the dim light. Among those holding the line was Sergeant John Basilone, leading 2 sections of heavy machine guns in the 1st Battalion, 7th Marines, under the legendary Chesty puller. His 16 men faced wave after wave of attackers, determined to break through to the airfield. The fighting was relentless, screams, gunfire, and the clash of steel echoing through the jungle. When one of Basilone's gun crews went down, leaving only 2 Marines to fight, Basilone didn't hesitate. He hoisted a 90-pound .30 caliber machine gun and its tripod onto his shoulders, ran 200 yards through incoming fire, and set it up himself. He fired point blank into the charging Japanese, cutting them down before they could reach his position. As the night wore on, his men struggled to keep their weapons functioning. Basilone rushed from gun to gun, clearing jams, repairing mechanisms, and encouraging exhausted Marines to keep fighting. When ammunition began to run out and the supply lines were cut, Basilone crawled through enemy fire twice to retrieve belts of ammunition. Each time, he returned loaded down, supplying his gunners and restoring their will to hold. The battlefield grew nightmarish. Japanese bodies were piled before his position. When attackers slipped behind the lines, Basilone drew his Colt .45 pistol and cut them down at close range. His blistered hands, burned raw from overheated barrels, never faltered. By dawn, the assault had collapsed. The Japanese had lost over 1,000 men. Henderson Field still belonged to the Marines. Eyewitnesses would later say, Basilone fought like a man possessed. EFC. Nash Phillips recalled, Basilone had a machine gun on the go for 3 days and nights without sleep, rest, or food. Others swore his actions were the glue that held the defense together. Chesty himself pushed hard for recognition, insisting Basilone's bravery had saved the battalion. In May year 1943, while his division rested in Australia, John Basilone stood before his fellow Marines to receive the Medal of Honor. The citation, signed by President Franklin D. Roosevelt, praised his extraordinary heroism and conspicuous gallantry in action against enemy Japanese forces. Photographs show him smiling modestly, almost uncomfortable with the attention, as the medal was draped around his neck. He had become the first enlisted Marine in World War II to earn the nation's highest award for valor. But Basilone's story was only beginning. Fame awaited him back home. Yet the Marine who had faced death on Guadalcanal would soon find himself in a role he never wanted, a symbol, a celebrity, and the face of America's war bond drive. When John Basilone returned to the United States after Guadalcanal, he was greeted not just as a Marine, but as a national hero. Small-town parades turned into massive celebrations. In his hometown of Raritan, New Jersey, more than 30,000 people crowded the streets to welcome him home. Newsreels captured his smile as bands played and neighbors presented him with gifts of gratitude. Life magazine featured him in its pages. Overnight, Manila John had become a symbol of courage. The Marine Corps placed him at the center of a nationwide war bond drive. He toured cities across America, speaking at rallies, shaking hands, and encouraging citizens to support the war effort with their dollars. Everywhere he went, he was recognized, celebrated, and honored. In total, his appearances raised millions for the war effort. Yet for Basilone, the role felt hollow. He wasn't comfortable with fame, and he didn't believe his place was on a stage. He had turned down a commission, insisting, "I'm just a plain soldier." The more he traveled, the more he longed for the front lines. To him, parades and speeches meant little compared to the bond he shared with Marines still fighting in the Pacific. In late year 1943, Basilone's pleas to return to combat were finally answered. Assigned to Camp Pendleton, California, he trained new Marines, preparing for the brutal fighting ahead. It was there that he met someone who would change his life forever. Lena Mae Riggy, a fellow Marine sergeant. Lena was strong, independent, and shared the same devotion to service. The two quickly grew close, and by July year 1944, they were married in an intimate ceremony. Their honeymoon was spent on her parents' farm in Oregon, a brief escape from the war that loomed over them both. Friends remembered the couple as deeply in love, and for the first time in years, Basilone seemed to find peace. But that peace would not last. By December year 1944, orders came down for his unit to deploy once again to the Pacific. Basilone had chosen this path willingly, refusing safer assignments and even a commission. "I belong with my boys," he had insisted. And so, with a final farewell to Lena, he boarded a ship bound for the next great battle, an island called Iwo Jima. He would never see her again. The 19th of February, year 1945. The Marines of the 5th Division stormed ashore on the black volcanic sands of Iwo Jima. Ahead of them loomed Mount Suribachi, and beneath its slopes, a labyrinth of Japanese bunkers, tunnels, and pillboxes, weighted with rifles and machine guns trained on the beach. Among the waves of men pushing through the deadly fire was Gunnery Sergeant John Basilone, now a machine gun section leader with Company C, 1st Battalion, 27 Marines. As soon as his boots hit the sand, he saw the slaughter around him. Marines were pinned down, cut apart by withering fire from concrete strongholds. The only way to survive was to keep moving. "Get off the beach!" Basilone shouted, urging his men forward. Then, taking the fight into his own hands, he flanked a heavily fortified blockhouse. Grenades and demolitions in hand, he charged through the chaos, blasting the enemy bunker apart and clearing the way for his company to advance. But his courage didn't end there. Moments later, a Marine tank became trapped in an enemy minefield, exposed to deadly artillery and mortar fire. Ignoring the shells raining down, Basilone guided the tank to safety, saving both the crew and the infantry who depended on its support. Then, only minutes later, fate caught up with him. While moving along the edge of an airfield, a mortar shell exploded nearby. Shrapnel tore through his body. John Basilone, who had fought with superhuman resolve on Guadalcanal and returned by choice to face death again, was killed instantly. He was just 27 years old. For his actions that day, destroying enemy defenses, saving his men, and inspiring those around him, Basilone was posthumously awarded the Navy Cross, the second highest decoration for valor. He remains the only enlisted Marine of World War II to have received both the Medal of Honor and the Navy Cross. His sacrifice on Iwo Jima cemented his place as one of the greatest heroes in Marine Corps history. John Basilone's story did not end on Iwo Jima. His body was laid to rest in Arlington National Cemetery, but his memory lived on. The destroyer USS Basilone bore his name. In 2005, the U.S. Postal Service honored him with a commemorative stamp. Books and documentaries retold his story. And in HBO's The Pacific, millions watched his sacrifice brought to life. Most of all, he remained a symbol in Raritan, New Jersey, where parades still march in his honor. Sergeant John Basilone was more than a Marine. He became a legend whose courage continues to inspire generations. How did one Marine almost single-handedly stop 3,000 Japanese soldiers in the dark of night? By refusing to break when everything around him collapsed. Why did he return to battle when he could have lived a life of fame? Because John Basilone believed his place was with his fellow Marines. From Guadalcanal to Iwo Jima, he embodied duty, sacrifice, and courage beyond measure. His story reminds us that true heroism often comes with the highest cost. If you want more untold stories of World War II heroes, subscribe now and help us keep their memory alive.